Welcome to Middle Fingers Up, the show where we hold our heads high and our middle fingers higher. I'm your host, Kieran McKay. Today we're back with Heidi Dinning, aka the Divorce Whisperer. In episode 54, Heidi shared invaluable insights into the impact of high conflict divorces on families, highlighting the need to prioritize children's well-being. And continuing our conversation, we're excited today to explore Heidi's unique role as the divorce doula. And I love this, so I'll keep saying this. Drawing from her personal experiences as both a child and adult experiencing divorce, Heidi brings a wealth of understanding and empathy to guide individuals through gaps of this challenging journey. And today we're back because we're going to focus primarily on the support of the children during the divorce. So let's welcome Heidi back. Hi.
Hello.
You're here again.
I'm here again.
So excited.
So fun.
Fun. Yeah. So episode 54 sparked some interesting feedback. But before we talk about that, let's do like a little recap of episode 54. So this was episode 54. Divorce doesn't break a family. It actually can shift a family. Pretty powerful quote there.
Yeah.
So let's test our brains here for a second. So if we were to do a little recap, what would be like the top 5 things we'd want to talk about? So maybe the first thing was you identified a song that if divorce had a soundtrack or a song, you identified. Do you remember what it was?
Oh yeah, totally. Staying Alive.
Staying Alive by the Bee Gees.
Yeah, and it made me laugh afterwards often, and I actually brought it up to a few clients. And they were like, totally. So you don't want to change it. You're going to stick with that one. Let's stick with it. Yeah.
Good. That was a good choice. That was a good one. We covered a lot about curiosity and judgment.
Yeah.
Right? And that really stood out for me. And I had a little discussion, on Instagram, you can kind of have your little note section and people can respond back to you. And so I've been trying to put something out there, and I got a lot of feedback and conversations from folks about curiosity and judgment. Like, what's the difference to people?
Okay.
And so to me, that really stood out because I think sometimes we think we're being curious and maybe we're not. Mm-hmm. We can go back to episode 54 to listen to that a little more. But that was one of the highlights. We talked about your role.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a certified divorce coach. You are a divorce recovery coach. Mm-hmm. You have an expertise in interpersonal communications. You went to the High Conflict Institute. You're a licensed practitioner practicing new ways for families.
Yeah, it's part of the High Conflict Institute sort of book of practice, and they put together their new ways approach to high conflict in families, in mediation, in workplaces.
Yeah.
And so I did the licensing for that to be able to have a clear line of sight on personality disorders, high conflict personalities, and how to eliminate conflict as best as possible in family situations experiencing divorce.
That's interesting. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Yeah. So like how would that certificate or that come into play in your day-to-day with clients?
So, I mean, I can think of a perfect example. We have this new tool called a cell phone, which, has its apps and its tools such as text and email and all of those things. And in conflict, it's easier to hide behind a text or an email and provoke a fight, call someone out, insult someone. And so one of the first steps in teaching an individual and or parents is how to communicate. Mm. So what does it look like to communicate effectively around the children specifically? What does it look like to eliminate conflict and emotion and only focus on the facts in an email or a text?
Like, what time are you picking the kids up? The kids need this doctor's appointment. things like that, as opposed to, I can't believe you were effing late again. You didn't show up, even though that's sometimes what you really want to do, I would imagine. But.
Yeah. And often one party will continue that chaos train. And so part of what I teach clients is how to step off that chaos train and only respond to what needs to be responded to, not absorb what they're saying, but just observe what they're saying. I mean, that's just really one of many different tools. But in order to eliminate conflict, it really is, again, taking that ability to step out of the situation and look at it from the outside in and decide how you want to move forward.
Yeah.
And so communication is key. How to write those emails that are of fact-based, diplomatic, friendly, but firm and all about logistics and facts only, without the emotion. Or exactly that, the hockey bag's in my garage, and not responding with, you're such an asshole. Why didn't you bring it over? Blah, 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 blah. Well, I was late for work and I'm working because I'm supporting our family. And it's like, thank you for letting me know.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Right?
I got to ask, I'm glad I asked you a little more about this, because I would imagine that's a common contributing factor to the high conflict is exactly text or email, or like you said. So if you could pick one of the strategies that you've seen really help individuals go from the example of the hockey bag to thanks for letting me know, what do you think would be the most effective tool that's been used and you've seen work, maybe even for yourself?
Pause. And respond before you react. So you and I had a conversation about self-awareness before we started recording, right? And so know your emotional trigger and or emotional dysregulation, regulation, and take a pause and learn that your reaction is not productive. And if it requires a response, wait to respond, not react, right? So I'll work with clients often on the pause. Just pause. Of course, the hockey bag was left in their garage because they were too lazy to drive it over and they were late and all of those things, but it's there. The reality is you need to get it so that you can get your son to hockey on time or your daughter to hockey on time. So you can say all those things to me if you want, that you want to say. And then you respond with thanks for letting me know, and put your catharsis somewhere else, vent somewhere else, so that you can just continue to be productive.
Yeah, open up your notes section on your phone and write number 99 on why I left you. Or
Exactly. Exactly.
But I like that response versus reaction. I remember that phrase a lot working in mental health with clients that had a lot of cognitive deficits and struggles to understand how to respond with logic and not emotion. And that would be a trigger for sometimes the staff, because you're working with young people for 12, 14, 15 hours a day. That can be taxing.
Yeah.
And so that was a common thing. We talked a lot about the difference between a response and a reaction, and trying to teach the young people their thoughts, feelings, emotions, all those sorts of things, and how do you respond. And I think, since leaving, it's like you forget some of these things. But when you brought that up, I thought, oh yeah, that's such a powerful phrase and a reminder of, I can say all those things, or what's my focal point? What am I trying to get to? This is, not the behavior, just like you said, the facts. And often we will respond to the behavior.
That's right.
So I think that's a great strategy. So pause. And, sometimes we think we have to respond right away, but you're right. We don't.
Or at all. And, another quick scenario is I was working with a client this morning they're moving towards separation. She said, I am scared that it's going to trigger backlash and, make it worse. And so what we talked about was, where will the backlash come from? Text. Oh, interesting. Okay. So basically we're going to prepare ourselves for a barrage of texts, but are we fearful about your physical safety? No, but it's just the text bombing. Okay, great. Well, guess what? We can put your phone on silent, or we can anticipate what's going to be said and have a laugh and go, of course, that's the response. Or you can put it all in a box and I'll review it so you don't have to, so you can stay calm. But just that reality that it's just a text.
Yeah.
And it's a really powerful message to clients to remember that it is just a text.
Yeah.
And it can spiral, if he thinks that or she thinks that, and I can't let them think that. Well, why not?
Well, we can't control. We talked about control and charge last time too, right? Like, what can I be in charge of? I can't be in control. And I think that's another example of what you're saying, which is, they can do all those things and they might very well do that. However, how do we stay in your lane?
Yeah.
And keep, as we talked about, it was one of the top highlights here. We talked about this last time, the swimming pool analogy.
Yeah.
How do we keep getting, keep focusing, getting to the other end of that pool? And I think that's a great example of response versus reaction. Response is helping us get to that other end of the pool. Yeah. So that's a good one. I like that we talked about your background with the High Conflict Institute, because as I said, that's probably one of your top reasons in how we do communicate when we are mad at each other or passive aggressive. And it's often through those texts. And you're right. A lot can be said. So you also, going back to our highlights of your background, you also are an author. We didn't really get to touch on this last time. And I think we will a lot today because it's related to talking about the kids. So navigating the hard conversations, as well as the real how to talk to your kids about divorce. You also have a guide. There's a bunch of resources that we listed last time. We can list again. But let's talk a little bit about the book. So how can these books be helpful for those going through divorce?
So in my work, what became apparent to me was there is a way to set the tone for how, so you're separating, you're worried about the kids. There is a way to set the tone of how the entire situation and journey of separation to divorce to two homes to the new normal will go. And there's age-appropriate words and information that really, with the ultimate goal of making sure that you are keeping the kids emotionally safe and stable through tools that I have honed especially for this particular moment. And so it really was born out of my own situation way back in the day, just trying to focus less on the emotion and more on the logistics to save them from experiencing our feelings. And then as I started to do this work, that really rang true and came home to me that if we can focus on what is again and focus on what is actually happening as it relates to the divorce, not the specific reasons, not the adult relationship, but the shift in the family, the relationship needing to change, not compromising yourself.
Because those are the things that the kids really need to know or want to know.
Well, and
that's because it impacts them, right?
It impacts them, and they're following. So there's kind of a few things. They're following your lead, and we tend to little adult our kids and think they know more than they actually do. They have their own experience. It's not the same as yours. Their brains have not developed fully until they're 25. So giving them information that they actually cannot process or handle because of pure brain development is not okay. And so all of that became this facilitation between either an individual client, and then I started having couples come to me saying, we hear you can help us tell our kids we're getting divorced and everyone's going to be okay. So I wrote an ebook and produced a video course on actually that. And it is really setting the stage, taking care of yourself, how you actually hold the conversation and the why based on their age, based on their stage, based on your family situation, teaching yourself how to let go of you and go into their world and support and validate them. I'm very passionate about it because if you want these kids to understand that relationships change, not compromise themselves, create boundaries, be okay that life and humanity does shift and evolve, then there's a way to do it. And there's big common mistakes that parents will make, either just because they just do, because it seems natural. And there's mistakes that parents make on purpose. And so avoiding those mistakes and understanding the ramifications of those is also part of my passion project, really, because I want these kids to come out the other side. I mean, like we said last time, 50% of the population, at least, experiences divorce. So half the kids out there are living in two homes. The stigma needs to be removed so that when they say, this is my mom's house, this is my dad's house. Oh, cool. Not, oh, your family's broken.
Yeah.
Oh, no, your family was actually broken when it was in the same house and you were living in this like toxic tension. Mm-hmm. Now it's fixed. You've got the best version of each parent. And having a kid at the age and stage that they are understand that is really what my ebook and course is about.
Yeah.
So one day it's not going to be an ebook. It's actually going to be a book. The way that I have put that together, and really like, it's not just about that first conversation. If you've had that first conversation and you totally botched it, it's how to fix that. It's how to tend to that wound and close it. If you're on the journey and it's difficult, take the tools from that initial stage and reset and keep going.
It's a process. It's not a task. A task is something we write on a list and cross it off. This is, like you said, the parents are going to be evolving. The kids are going to be, there might be other partners entering. And so we can't just say, we had this divorce or talk to the kids and now we're done.
Yeah.
It's going to keep coming up. And like you said, telling my 5-year-old versus my 10-year-old, or telling my 5-year-old and then talking about it again when they're 10, two different conversations likely, because they're going to understand. Their questions are going to be different.
Yeah.
So I think it's a lovely resource, and we'll put this up again when we post this episode, because I would really recommend folks, you write a little on the website, it's a really good summary as well. For anyone that's curious or wondering about the book, you'll get a really good sense about it before you go ahead and get it. So I would really recommend taking a look at it.
Again, it's not expensive. And because my hours are finite, so having coaching hours with me, great. Like, please come. I'd love that. But I can't get to everybody, and I want to get to everybody. And this message of all of these, I mean, I think there was like 18,000 Google searches or something crazy of kids in divorce. How do I tell my kids? Just making sure that there's a resource out there that you can grab that's inexpensive, that gives you the same messages. And then my video coaching is like coaching with me, because I'm pretty normal and real, and you'll see I'm like sweating in it and like getting, tired. But I'm giving you that sense of, oh my God, she really is with me all along the way, because I can't, because my hours are only finite. So I really wanted to create something that could extend out beyond just my coaching hours. And that was really important to me too. And be accessible.
Everyone seek support in different ways. For some, self-learning and education, reading and looking at articles, those kinds of things are the way that they would. Others, it is having a coach in the room with them. And so it's great that you offer different ways to reach out to folks that are going through this. Because like you said, the end game is supporting young people that can grow to be thriving. And we talk a lot on the show about, we bring a lot of our childhood along with us as we grow into our future, and relationships are always part of our lifespan. And that doesn't just mean with partners, it means with colleagues, it means with a boss, it means with all different people. And so having done the work, or really looking at how attachment affects us at an early age, or how divorce, separation can impact anxiety and our young children's learning curve, I think always on this show, we will support all those resources, because we really want our young people to not have to experience our trauma, our struggle. So I think that's great. So we are talking about the highlights of the last episode. We talk a little bit today, just a recap of your background. And so the couple of other highlights would be, I think you said this already, park the shame and look at what is. And that's exactly what you touched on right now. And looking at what is talking about, how do you bring safety to the table? How do we meet at the table? What's the work we have to do? And then lastly, I think a big thing that we talked about in episode 54, it started at the beginning and it carried out, was the stigma. And it came up already today. And we can have these resources. We can talk about these things on podcasts. However, we need everyone to do some deep digging about, why do I get defensive, or what's that icky feeling when I think of divorce, or I know a friend that's divorced and I'm not a fan of it. All those sorts of things that come up that contribute to the stigma. I think that's sort of all of our responsibility, whether we're in a relationship or not. How am I approaching folks that are going through divorce, separation. And, that kind of brings us to the feedback, because a divorce stigma comes up quite a bit on dating apps. When you look up whoever you're looking up in the demographic, whatever region or whatever dating app we're on here, you can read about the person's profile, and you always have an option of writing if you're single, if you're, hopefully you are, I don't know, like maybe you're not, you're dating all sorts of people, and that's okay. Whatever works. Yeah. But you can talk about widow, divorce, those separated. And my understanding is people will sort of think twice before they right off the bat let people know if they're divorced. And I think to each their own. Privacy means all sorts of things. However, my understanding, a lot of why people won't put that out there is because of the stigma. And I had a friend on, we talked about it a few episodes ago. She talked about what the dating world is like, and she was divorced 18, 19 years ago, and it still comes up. It's still a thing. And it's interesting because once your episode aired, I got feedback from folks. First of all, they thought that your strategies, and even just today, 5 minutes with you, you're already giving us so many things. Like you talk in strategies, and I think people find that really helpful. I got some feedback with folks saying that they felt neither one of us presented the topic with judgment. And someone said, when you haven't even experienced divorce, to me. And so, they thought that was helpful as role modeling for, okay, how can we have this conversation? Yeah. And then the one that I sort of wanted to share, there was feedback about blended families. And so some people are divorced, they're dating. And while some of the folks that are dating don't have kids that have been divorced, they're dating folks that do have kids.
Oh, yeah.
And someone told me that I thought was really interesting. They're like, I actually took notes because some of the people that I have been seeing do have children, even though I don't. And I have to decide what my role is going to be, because I'm that other quote unquote partner now. And I interestingly had another conversation with someone not too long ago as their experience as quote unquote the other woman, and the messages that go back and forth between the biological mother towards this quote unquote other woman. It's sad because these texts that are going back and forth, or these judgments that are coming out, they're leaking onto the kids. Kids are getting a sense of, well, my dad doesn't like my mom's partner, my mom doesn't like my dad's partner, that sort of thing. And so I just thought if you had any insight or feedback or advice about people who are entering a blended family or dating someone with children as that quote unquote other partner, they could be at a vantage point if they wanted to. So how can their role impact the children, and hopefully positively, but what would you say about how their role can impact?
Oh yeah, that's loaded. We could do a whole nother episode on that.
Part 3. I'm going to book you right now.
Seriously though, because of, what a blended family or an evolved family looks like. What can I impart? The listener who was taking notes, who's on the dating scene, who doesn't have kids, who's dating individuals that may or may not have kids. What I would say is you have an opportunity to be another loving, respected role model for the children. So that's kind of one. I think it's really critical to go in with your eyes wide open and understand, have a good line of sight on the dynamic between the person you're dating and the children. But when you really care about someone, you're going to figure it out. And yeah, when things get leaky and adult issues, and this goes back to the same in my ebook, when things get leaky and adult issues trickle on to the kids, it's not okay. And so that's kind of a golden rule of separation and divorce, to keep your stuff in your bucket and not commiserate with the kids. It's not healthy for them. They don't need to know. It's your job to put on a good show and show them that you can operate with dignity and integrity about dad's partner or mom's partner. Oftentimes when you're dating too, I would say you need to wait before you introduce. Yeah. It's kind of important to wait the kids form attachments, their brains aren't formed. So it's important to not, again, it's sort of a basic rule is to not introduce your kids to someone until you know that they're going to be a long-term person. And then if that person is your long-term person and they're trying to figure out what that looks like for them, whether they have kids in blended or they don't, it goes back to the same fundamentals of operating with the kids as the line of sight priority, operating with integrity, making a choice, really. I myself have a wonderful relationship with my stepkid's mom. We text all the time. We have lots of laughs. We have chosen the parenting trifecta. So between their dad, who's now my husband, their mom, and myself, we parent together. There is a way to do that. And it does take, it's not hard, but it does take a conscious effort to say, okay, we need to do again, let's go back to what's best for the kids, put our shit aside and focus on making sure that we're making healthy decisions for the kids. And so I think when you're entering into that, when you're in that dating scene of divorce, and each situation is going to look different and each family is going to look different. And as you evolve in your blend, you can make the rules and your family looks how it looks because you're formulating it. And I use my own family now as that example. I didn't ever think I was ever going to get married again. Like, no freaking way. And neither did he. And we got married 2 years ago. We've been together 10 years today, actually.
Oh,
and
congrats.
Yeah, but we got married for a totally different reason. And it was because we brought our family together and because we've chosen this ability to look at each other as adults. I know my stepkid's mom looks at me with respect and she's grateful for the benefit that I bring to add to her children's life.
Wow.
Which takes a really big person to do that. And
yes.
And if you can get yourself to that place of letting go and knowing that someone could very well be a good influence, a positive role model. And on the flip side, if you can think of yourself as someone coming in that can influence the children positively, that's all it takes.
Yeah.
You're not replacing mom or dad. You're not having to play that role.
But that's the worry, right?
That's the insecurity, yeah.
Yeah, that the other, and let's say if it was my case, the other mother, the stepmom's going to come in and my kids are going to love her more, or what is she feeding what information about me? And those are the things that I hear coming up that seem to get in the way of getting to where you and your family are at, is insecurity, lack of trust, maybe even a child, like an adult, but a child themselves that have experienced poor relationships in the past, which is what we're getting at too, is like, can we teach our kids to not have to be in that place, that we can all have our boundaries and there's room for all of us. But I find that's what often happens, is the struggle of being replaced. Yeah.
So I would look at that from two angles. One, you cannot replace someone's mom or dad. You just can't. They are always and forever mom and always and forever dad. So that goes out to those moms or dads that are listening that feel like, oh my God, they're way more fun than me or whatever. No one, I assure you, can replace who you are. And then the kids sometimes have that sort of standoffishness and make it difficult for the new person. And it's important to find a way to communicate as well that I'm not here to replace. Your mom is your mom and she's amazing and she made you and there's room for all of us. All I'm here to do is love you and create a friendship that is between us, and our relationship will be unique. It doesn't need a label. And when you can achieve that kind of dynamic, that's when everyone succeeds and flourishes. When there's someone who's short-sighted and putting you down, and, if there are those situations where mom's insulting dad's new girlfriend or dad's insulting, whatever, again, it goes back to the fundamentals of what I'm talking about. What's the benefit? Why are we doing this? Does it feel really good for the moment just to talk about that? And then crappy for the kid. Kid puts the kid in the middle. You're the adult, act like an adult. And to what benefit does it? Basically, it's kind of the same as a reactive text. Like it's not productive.
Yeah.
So if you're really coming at this from how do I move forward in my new normal in this world of 2 homes, now I have a new partner. How do I allow that new partner into the fold with grace and dignity and take those steps one at a time? And really, it takes an honesty. My amazing, gorgeous stepdaughter, it was hard for her in the beginning. And I get that. I have a stepson and a stepdaughter. I came into the fold with 2 fiery redhead daughters and she was right in the middle of them. Oh. So I got it and I saw her, and that's really all it took for, it's, it evolves, but very much it was like, I'm not offended by her sort of being standoffish to me.
You're not taking it personal. It's not about you.
Of course it hurts. It's like, no. And what it took was me going, I see you. I see you. And I get you. And I can't imagine what it's like. So I'm here to let you know that I get it.
Yeah.
And
so giving her like a door opener, you're giving her a reason to
validation.
100%.
Totally.
How else can we build and earn each other's trust without coming in with safety? That's a great example of safety.
Exactly. And it's emotional safety. Or, like even cut to now, my 16-year-old, she's struggling with some feelings about dad, and as a result, sort of deflecting that onto her stepdad. And we're kind of all going, what is going on? And it became very apparent of what was going on. And he was the one that held space for that. He's like, I'll take it. I get it. I see what's going on here. It's okay. Let's just, and it really is about, it's hard work. And so that's the other thing I'll say about blended families. They're hard work, and it's a commitment that is a whole new normal. It's a whole new commitment. It's hard work, but it's about keeping your eyes wide open and seeing people for who they are, what's going on in their worlds, and formulating your situation to the best of what you need it to be. Again, not what the world says it should be, or the Brady Bunch, or all of that stuff. It's important to come into it with your eyes wide open and set expectations.
Yeah.
And so if you're, again, our note taker listener, if you're coming into a situation, it's really important to have that conversation with your new partner about honesty and eyes wide open and good pace. It might not be the right time to meet the kids. What's going on for the kids? What's the schedule like? How are things with mom? Is it a good time for me to come into this fold right now? Maybe not. Let's reassess in a few months. Like those.
That's thinking in the best interest of the kids. All those examples you just shared are literally not about me as the other person, but I'm trying to fit into what's happening over here, and how can I, like you said, come in with curiosity. When I hear eyes wide open, I hear what you talked about last episode, which was the difference between curiosity and judgment.
Yeah.
And we can win in so many ways when we choose the curiosity way. And I agree. Like you said, it's hard, I would imagine. It's hard navigating in a nuclear family or your own siblings, your own household, let alone this new relationship. And we didn't all start at the beginning together.
Yeah.
We're finding a new beginning while we're in the middle of something. So I can appreciate how difficult that would, in my time working in mental health, I literally in less than a handful of times have seen blended families working so well.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of pain, a lot of leaking, like you said, back and forth, unfinished business, all sorts of things. And when I saw a few of those families doing it in a way that I thought, oh my gosh, because this also is an example of having self-compassion, because you have more hands on deck and you can lean in on each other. You have biological parents struggling because her child is suicidal. Mm-hmm. Yet you can have voices of reason in these step parents that can come in a little, right? Come in without the emotion sometimes. So the families that I saw doing that, I thought, oh my gosh, kudos to you. They need to write a book or join you, because like you said, it can't be easy. So, okay. So let's do our MFU segment, and then we're going to talk about the kids. So
I feel like we have already. But
We really have started a nice segue into it. Let's pause. Did you bring something today?
I did.
Okay.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I'm just declaring my middle fingers up.
Yeah.
To bullies.
Oh.
I've seen a lot of bullies, both from a child's perspective and an adult perspective in the last couple of weeks since I've been here.
Huh.
And middle fingers up. Like, come on. And I get they might have their struggles, but bullying in a courtroom, bullying in a separation and divorce, bullying on the playground, bullying over Snapchat, not okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This
is hard, no, double middle fingers up.
Double, yeah. I'm going to join you too.
Yeah.
What do you think it is that, I mean, I understand the traditional textbook. You grow up in a very abusive environment, unstable environment as a child. You've experienced trauma without having the support that comes after trauma, all sorts of things that can lead to a child, let's say bullying at the playground, child's watching the people in their environment bullying. Then we grow up and we're supposed to do all this work along the way. What do you think outside that traditional example, what gets in the way of carrying out these bullying moments, like you said, in the courtroom, through text, all these interactions? How is it serving people?
It's not, but it's serving like the bully. It's power and control.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perceived power and control. Perceived power and control. Yeah, I think that perceived power. So if I go to an example, my daughter had some incidences with some unfortunate humans over Snapchat. Perceived power, like quick hit, quick rush of just hiding behind the text and firing away, thinking they're all that. That
mean girls mentality.
Mean girls. You just took the words right out of my mouth. Queen bees, right?
Yes, yeah.
Perceived power. And that's what they say, it's not, the popular girls actually aren't popular. They're powerful. The popular ones are actually the ones that are really nice. The girls that are popular, but actually everyone hates are powerful because they're mean.
We're all afraid of them. So
we're all afraid of them. So we're like, oh yeah. And then, it translates into the courtroom, into an abusive marriage, into post-separation abuse. It's power and control. It's trying to win. It's power and control. And then it's perceived power and control. And so, my same client this morning, where we were preparing her for sharing the news that this marriage that has been over for a very long time due to abuse and power and control is over, and empowering her to know that she actually has power. And his power is simply just perceived.
Yeah.
And he will be a bully over text because he can.
Yeah.
And it's just perceived power and control. And it can go away pretty quickly. And then I had another client today who's, on the other side, the lawyer is a complete aggressive bully in the courtroom just to shut everybody down. And so we know that. And so instead of her being afraid of this bully, we reshaped our strategy and set her up with a lawyer that actually knows the other side so that they know how she operates and they can be solutions focused immediately. Not so she can take her on.
Yeah.
So she can take her on.
But respond versus react.
Exactly. But so that they can respond and stay productive. Middle fingers up to wasting that time and energy and hurting people just for perceived power and control.
I'm with you. I'm going to put my middle fingers up to that too. I will always put my middle fingers up to that. Yes. And well said, perceive power and control. And I think sometimes those that are experiencing that kind of bullying towards them, I think that can be helpful to go back and sort of dig deep of what does perceived power and control mean? Because when you break that apart, you're like, oh, okay. I just disarming that bully and recognizing that whole saying of your bark is bigger than your bite, essentially.
Yep.
So exactly, right? So yeah, I'm with you on that one. So
yeah.
Well said.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I got some questions for you. We didn't get to talk about the kids. We've had a good start, and I just want to focus a little bit more, if we can, about how can those going through divorce think about the kids. You talked about it, for the kids' sake. We have to stop these passive aggressive conversations, texts, behaviors that we have towards each other when we're going through such a high conflict divorce? What are the ways to avoid the high conflict? We talked about a lot of that, but we didn't really get to focus on the kids. And so I'm so glad you're back today to talk a little bit more about how do we build up the kids' voice? Because I can imagine the younger the child, the quieter the voice. What do we think is the most common reason why children can end up in the middle?
Yeah. So I guess what I will say is parents need to give themselves a break in that a lot of this is, like we've talked about, strategy and skill-based. A lot of it is awareness of not knowing and knowing what actually that means. And so again, in my ebook, I talk about mistakes that parents commonly make. And so I think that's a good place to start. How do kids end up in the middle? Let's kick it off. If you're planning your conversation around telling your kids that you and your spouse are separating, there's 5 big mistakes that I focus on. But number 1, they only know what you're telling them. So if you're going in with all of your emotions about it, they're going to take that on. And maybe one of you is going in centered and the other one just lets it rip and tells the whole story, and they're going to take that on. So then all of a sudden they're in the middle. So example, parents are going to tell the kids that they're separating. They've got their script. Our relationship isn't working in the way it is. And then mom comes in and says, oh my God, it's because dad had an affair and Susie down the street is his new girlfriend. And so the kids are going to take that on. The kids are automatically going to take mom's side and or defend dad. And that starts to put them in the middle. So lesson number 1, there is a level of honesty. So I had someone on Instagram say, shouldn't you have an honest conversation with your kids? 1000%. But that doesn't mean they need to know the adult topics that are happening between you two as adults. So yes, and it's an honest conversation. Our relationship, because it's true, Susie down the street is a symptom of a crack already in the foundation of the relationship and or what's going on between you. So our relationship isn't working as a marriage. We're going to move to 2 homes and take physical space and find the place the relationship needs to be. That's actually true. So, well, why? You know what? The why between us is between us. Well, haven't you tried? We've really tried. We're adults and we've made this decision with clarity and conviction, and we're here today. So you can have an honest conversation without giving them information that is way too adult for them to know. Number 2, take on the emotions. I've got terrible, awful, horrible, very bad news. Dad and I are getting divorced. Mom and I are getting divorced. Isn't that terrible? Kids are like, okay, I guess it's terrible. I'm supposed to feel awful and shame and fear and sadness. Or, you know, guys, again, focus on the logistics so that the kid can say, oh my gosh, I feel sad. And then the parents can go into their world and feel sad. I see you feel sad. Tell me more. It's a lot. It's heavy. I might get emotional because this is an emotional time, but I'm just feeling all the feelings. That's, again, keeping them isolated from the middle. Commiserating. I'm divorcing your dad because he's a total asshole. It's like, okay. And maybe he is, but that's not healthy nor safe for the child. It's, you know, this is, again, going back to my same original script. And so that's kind of in that stage of learning how to summarize, take yourself and leave your stuff in your box, go into theirs, validate and support their feelings around the changes, answer their questions honestly, but without going overboard. And you can declare as an adult. We seem to forget that this day. Like, you can say, you know what, that's adult information that I'm not going to disclose because it's really none of your business. But what is your business is how this is going to go and how we're going to support you. And parents forget that they can do that and protect the kids by keeping the adult issues and the kids separate. And then as we go along, you know, it's it is really important to be self-aware and see when you are putting the kids in the middle, as simple as, can you tell your mom that I'm going to be late for pickup? Or
your dad sent you with that jacket on?
Yeah. Did you tell your dad that I want all the clothes back? Like those kinds of things, put them right in the middle. Or what did you guys get up to this weekend? What was your mom doing? Did your mom's friends come over? Like mining for information puts them in the middle. So your job as a parent is to, again, leave your stuff and support the kid in where they're at. You need the clothes back, you talk to dad. So if they walk in with a jacket that's 5 sizes too small and the brand new jacket that you bought, the Super Puff from Aritzia that you bought is still at dad's house, that kid is coping with having to pack and do all that stuff. You look and you go, oh my gosh, your jacket looks small. And they'll be like, oh yeah, dad wanted to keep the Super Puff. It's like, oh, cool. Okay, no problem. We'll follow up with that. Why don't you take that off? Because that looks like it's cutting off your circulation. Like make a joke and move on. Well, mom, can you get my Super Puff back? Totally. You leave it to me. Mm-hmm. Don't worry about it. Mm-hmm. That's not your job. Your job is to just be here. What was your favorite part about the weekend? Not how was your weekend, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's those little messages that, or information. Like I had a client that was like, yeah, I just learned that my kids are going to New Zealand in February. I was like, oh, how'd you learn that? Oh, from the kids. I'm like, interesting. Yeah. And so do you believe that? She's like, well, what am I supposed to do? I'm like, you're to say to the kids, that sounds awesome. I'm going to follow up with dad and get all the information so you guys are set. Mm-hmm. And then you can turn around and go, what the is going on? And you don't talk to the kids about that stuff. You talk to me first and set the rules. And I think it's important in the beginning too, to kind of reference some rules of engagement and codes of conduct about, and I read separation agreements all the time. That's like, you will not speak ill about the other parent. You will not communicate through the kids. People actually don't know what that means. So what I do is have people flesh out the separation agreement as examples. Items will not be discussed. Travel will not be discussed. Change in the schedule will not be discussed with the kids. It will be discussed with the parent. Mm-hmm. And those kinds of things that are really simple and easy. And I get that. Like I'm really giving a shout out to parents because it's really hard. You can simply do that and not even realize. And so being really conscientious of practicing taking yourself out, your ex-spouse out, the kids out, and looking at the situation. So after a pickup at mom's weekend, it's important to say like, what was your favorite part? Or you've got a big smile on your face, something that is totally innocuous, but gives the kids some love and support. The other kind of area that can put kids in the middle is transitions. Transitions are hard, and no matter how you slice it, it can't be easy to have to pack your stuff up and go to the other parent's house. I have big heart feelings around that. For my stepkids now, even 10 years later, they're teenagers. We're kind of a little more flexible. We're like, yeah, you probably had to study, had football. Last thing you want to do is pack, no problem. But just having to adapt to a new house, new rules. And what you don't want to do is have the kid feel like they have to perform for you. So you're all excited to see them and they feel like they have to perform. Or on the flip side, you're leaving and you're all sad and they feel like they have to perform. I use the analogy of like a very smooth, perfectly formed figure eight. And that's how it should feel when they're transitioning. You let them in, you give them love, you let them do what they need to do to settle in. You do something normal, you make dinner, you call everyone for dinner, and it's normal. When they're leaving your house, if you're feeling the feelings and you're really sad about it, it's your job to say, yeah, I'm feeling some feelings, just ignore me. Mm-hmm. I love you. Don't you worry for a minute. I'm going to be just fine. I'm going to meet my girlfriends for a glass of wine or, I'm going to meet my buddies for shinny or whatever. I'm good. Mm-hmm. You are awesome. I'm good. And I love you. And I'll talk to you this week. And separating, not making them feel guilty for the situation that you put them in.
Yeah. Okay, so this is great. Again, this is part of the feedback we've gotten is that your strategies, you talk in a way that I can see why that listener was writing notes because it's like, oh,
Yeah,
that's a good
good.
idea. That's a good idea. Totally.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering because you mentioned transitions between households, and it's funny because I actually have this written on here. And I had an example of, I want to give a shout out to a family. My son's friend, one of his really good friends, I have been watching for a few years this young boy go from two homes, and both biological parents are I believe, remarried. One has another child, the other one doesn't. And what I have found amazing, these family members, the four of them, whether they have animosity towards each other or not, I would never know how they work together. I've seen them at birthday parties. I've seen them coordinating and driving. They also live very close to each other so that their son can go to the same school. And it's not so far. He's kind of on a similar bus schedule or can be picked up and dropped off. And sometimes you don't see that. You see kids have to travel really far. Mm-hmm. He's fortunate in that his family can provide in a way that he doesn't have to pack his bags. So he has stuff at one house and he has stuff at the other house. And if he really wants to bring that pair of jeans, I'm sure he'll figure out how to bring them. But I talked to him last year because the conversation of the phone, getting a cell phone came up. Mm-hmm. And he was the first one in the friends and he got a phone. And I asked him, oh, like, you have a phone and how's that working? And so first thing he said to me was, my mom and my dad took me out for coffee and we talked about the rules. So the parents are doing this amazing job communicating in the background and preparing for milestones. Like, we know
awesome.
he's going to enter adolescence. He's going to ask for a phone. How do we figure this out? Sure, again, there would be things that they don't agree on because Carrie and I wouldn't even agree on certain things in the same household, right?
Yeah.
But they figure it out. And when I talk to this friend, he always has such amazing things to say about his family and the love that he feels. And he recognizes that he's getting old now. He recognizes they're working for him. They're doing this together because he's always talking about how fascinating they are. And I've let the parents know too, like on separate note, that your son brought up how amazing this one thing was, or I've seen how you guys never talk about each other. You're great. You're willing to be in a room together. And they appreciate it because they're like, we don't always feel that way.
Yeah.
Which, again, I can absolutely respect and understand. But the way that they make it work is exactly how their example is how I see this book that you're talking about and your strategies that you're talking about. They found ways to separate their irrational thoughts and feelings. Should they have any? I wouldn't know, but let's say they do. And maybe even interfering with boundaries. Like, we have stepdads and stepmoms. And so there's sometimes going to be clashes, and whether we want to be curious or not, we might have, judgments of, I can't believe your parent does this or that. But they seem to find a way to not bring it up and talk about it outward. I don't even sense any leaking. And so I asked them how they got there, and they say it's been years of work and figuring out what things we just don't talk to each other about.
Yeah.
And sometimes certain partners maybe don't need to talk to each other either all the time. They can find a way to be mutual, but they're not going to be best friends and these kinds of things. And I think they've given themselves some compassion in navigating this. And so they've gotten to that place. However, as you're sharing your examples, I'm imagining for the couples that are divorcing that feel the other partner is unsafe. Mm-hmm. And so now my kids who have been in my care and I see them all the time have to go to this other home where it's not safe. And whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I hear that. I hear that. And that's why they'll ask questions of, what did you do? And then it ends up being this investigation. And they're trying to sort through safety. And I would imagine, like you said, the kids are now performing. Any thoughts and feedback about how to talk about safety and as couples, as your relationship and your family is, changing?
Changing. And I think I do want to shout out, because that situation that you've just described is often not the case. Mm-hmm. And my blended family has worked so far, and we've worked really hard. Again, often not the case. And oftentimes too, it's one person in the relationship that doesn't make it easy, and the other person is so desperate to do all the right things. So I do actually want to express some sincere empathy to those parents right now, because that is really, really hard. And I talk about my blended family, and I doubt he's listening, but my kid's dad isn't in the picture. He's got some stuff, and that's been a challenge for me. And I've been desperate to raise my kids to be okay with that and raise my kids in a safe way. And I've had to be, and now I'm getting vulnerable, I've had to really learn what that word means. So I think, number one, I have a lot of empathy for the parents who are really, really trying, and I see you. And many of those parents are my clients. And so you can take what I'm saying and you can actually apply it as to yourself as an individual and tie up those wounds that might have been created by the other parent in a way that, hey, they're going to be there, but you can dress them and you can keep them from salt being thrown in. You can keep them from getting infected. You can dress them. And so you can take those tips and tricks and strategies and all of that I talk about in the ebook in terms of love, safety, and belonging. And I'll get to that as the individual parent. So, if your child's coming home and is protective of the other parent because they see that they're probably drinking too much, but they know enough that because drinking parent is saying, don't tell your other parent because they'll take you away from me. So this poor child is coming in with that fear. Being the parent they're coming to, you can still wrap them in that feeling of safety and stability and love so that they can talk to you about how they're feeling, deal with that wound of drinking parent, understand that that's not going to happen, and help them through it. That's one of 1,000 examples, but I just have such empathy. So I do know that those, shout out to your son's friends and those who can actually put their stuff aside, because a lot can't. So
totally.
The worry about safety. So the way that I look at safety is the Family Act states that it is a parent's job to operate in the best interests and well-being of a child's emotional, psychological, physical, financial, and spiritual safety at all times. So when one of those is in question, that's when we have to look at a situation of whether it's safe or not. And so even from the instance of telling your kids you're getting divorced, that's where I operate from. It's if you can operate with unconditional love, a feeling of safety, emotional, psychological, physical, financial, spiritual safety, and belonging in the unit, even though it's shifting, that's what will build a thriving child. Now, when you find yourself, in a situation where it's two homes and something isn't safe on the other side, you can ask yourself these questions. If they're coming home saying, my other parent, and I'm going to start saying my other parent because I work with men and women and dads and moms
and people that are non-binary.
Non-binary. And so I see the same behaviors throughout. So anyway, my other parent said that I look like I was gaining weight, or I'm, and it's a teenage girl that has already some insecurities. That's not a safe comment to make. Is it, oh my gosh, I'm going to parachute in and you can't be with that parent? No, but it's watching those sort of cracks in the safety and understand when it is time to intervene, what you can take care of in that conversation and when it's time to intervene. Or other parent got drunk and passed out at 6 and I couldn't find the cell phone and I was really scared. That requires an intervention. Something needs to happen. My other parent told me I was really stupid because I got 85 on my physics test and where was the other 15%? Not safe. That needs an intervention. So I think it's really important to, again, when you're setting the tone, whether it's both of you having the ability to put your stuff aside or one of you knowing that the other parent is a high conflict personality, perhaps has addiction issues, perhaps has narcissistic personality tendencies and traits and behaviors, you have to ask yourself what you're willing to take on as it relates to safety and what needs to be addressed outside of that unit. And it is a word I use all the time. That's not safe. And you have a job to keep your kids safe. Yeah. And oftentimes when it's a parent who perhaps has some mental health issues that they're not willing to admit to, or some addiction issues, or is abusive, when you have that job as the parent to keep your child safe, it means that it's less parenting time and or supervised parenting time for that child. That's when they may throw out the, your other parent's trying to take me away from you, blah, or you away from me, blah, blah, blah. They're alienating. And I want to be really clear that there is a very big difference between alienating a parent and gatekeeping a parent and actually keeping a child safe. Yeah. And these conclusions are drawn pretty quickly because they're easy grabs for the parent that's actually not safe. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we have to unravel that a little bit to help with the understanding. And there are parents out there that are forced into this position, and I'm working with some of them now, where it's like, what's going on the other side is not okay. Right. So you have a choice. You have a job to do, and you're putting your child at risk by exposing them to that physical, psychological, and you will hear, well, there's no physical violence. Hey, doesn't matter. Those 5 things are equal, and that's what that's about. Mm-hmm. So let's make sure. And so it comes back to that same conversation of setting the tone of safety. You're going to shake the ground under them with this whole new normal. If there's other elements that are creating a lack of safety or instability or causing anxiety, it's time to have your eyes wide open and decide what this is going to look like and look for the resources that you need. And oftentimes people will come to me first and say, okay, here's my situation. What do I do? Yeah. And we talk through it and we look at all the options, and then we add in, the team that they need in order to allow for a situation to build 2 safe, healthy parents, because ultimately that's what you want. Yeah. And so if I have a client who's saying, other parent is abusive or an alcoholic, I often say, so do you want to be a 24/7 parent? No. Mm-hmm. I want them to have a good relationship with their other parent. I want them to have a healthy relationship. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So we talk about that being the goal. And then very quickly they see that that's not their job. It's the other parents.
Yeah. How do you work backwards from that?
Yeah. Yeah. And so, here's the path, take it. Safety is a really critical concept as a parent and as a single parent to understand. As simple as you're single parenting and your child, you have a couple of glasses of wine or a couple beers or whatever, and all of a sudden your child spikes a fever and you can't drive to the hospital. Yeah. Like those little things you actually have to think about.
Totally. Yeah.
And take very seriously.
Because you're right. Like those are things that we should be sort of hopefully figuring out, or we've had a shitty situation that's helped us realize we can't keep going that way. However, I think you're right. You talked about a code of conduct a few minutes ago. Yeah. And I remember how codes of conduct were helpful on teams. Family values, essentially. Yeah. So in our family household, if we have a code of conduct, these are sort of safety and well-being. These are things that we naturally talk about when we're getting together as a family. And then when the family unit is changing, let's say through separation or divorce, like you said, that rug or that carpet that gets pulled, that code of conduct, all those values that we've been teaching our kids are kind of changing now because the adults are mad at each other, or the adults are trying to figure out how to stay a couple steps ahead in this difficult situation. So have you had conversations in your professional experience with the children? Because I'm curious what the kids' voices or what the kids are saying in these sorts of situations.
I don't work directly with the kids, but I do specifically ask questions and about where the kids are coming from. So if it's a situation where you've shared the news, and I set the families up to share the news, but then also deal with the aftershocks. And what I'm hearing when I'm mining for information as to how the kids are really doing so that I can help the parent take the next right step is that they do reflect back on those concepts of not compromising yourselves in relationships, that relationships change. They don't like that they have to move to 2 houses, but they get it. Or, I've had families say to me, you set us up for the most in-depth, heartfelt conversation our family has ever had. We went with it because we were real and honest about relationships, and it released the pressure valve. And all of a sudden, everyone was just really, really honest about things they were feeling and experiencing. And then we all went for dinner.
Wow.
And
I was not expecting that.
And it was like, oh my God, see?
Yeah.
Your humanity came out and the kids went with it. Like they felt human too. Or that the pressure valve, like I've had the conversation, I've set parents up where the kids are like you said in the beginning, like, no kidding. Like we knew, we're not dumb.
Yeah.
But we knew this was coming. So what's going to happen?
Right.
Or the raw and real, like, this is what's happening. Kids don't like it. 14-year-old son's upset about it, but because of the foundation that was laid, he'd ask a question and go, oh, yeah, no, that's none of my business. So what's going to happen when, mom moves into her new home? What's the schedule going to look like? It's like, that is my business. And dad will say, because I set him up, well, that is your business. And so what I do know is X. What I don't know quite yet is why. As soon as we know why, we'll let you know.
Right.
Great.
Or do you want to help us being part of?
Totally.
There's times where it's helpful to invite the kids in, with especially if something that's going to impact them, like schedule. What do you want us to take into consideration?
Yeah. So with older kids like that, for sure, it's like she's moving or he's moving to the south of the city and I play hockey 5 times a week in the north.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know that that's going to work. So can we create a situation where mom or dad, I can see you for lunch 3 times a week, and take that into consideration so that, you really apply the knowledge of what is for your family. It's the older kids that might have a little bit more. Younger kids, I had this one client who was like, so my son came to me and was like, Mom and Dad's totally healthy, relationship's great, super co-parenting. I really don't want to live at Dad's. I just want to live with you. And she was like, you're not allowed to play Fortnite at Dad's, are you? And he was like, damn,
triangulation.
Nice try. Totally. And so, there's going to be those moments where, of course, it's like, yes, you have a voice, but sometimes not a choice.
Yeah.
But
for that mom to play into it for fun, but also have dad's back in the moment. You talk about this on your socials. You talk about this in the work you do, that the kids are 50-50. So they're 50% one parent, mom, 50% dad. And so we used to talk, when I used to work where I was, we used to talk about this with the parents too, that you're projecting something that possibly is towards your ex, and your son looks so much like your ex, he's starting to behave in some ways like your ex, that this is now coming out towards your child. But how do we help you recognize that he is 50% a dad, just like he's 50% of you? Because sometimes those qualities come out and they scare parents, or they worry them or irritate them. Like, this is why I left your parent, and now this is how you are.
So your dad,
right? Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And so what's the thing to say or do about that?
So I think it's just that reminder and or knowledge base that you have to remember that your child is a unique individual that is a combination of half you and half the other parent. And if it's a situation, so number one, you're going to catch yourself saying anything of insult about the other parent to the child, because you're insulting half of them. And while it may seem kind of flippant and not a big deal, it is a big deal. That gets absorbed. It's not okay. And then also, if the other parent is making really poor choices and not healthy, it's also critical to ensure that the child knows that they're not half bad because of mom or dad's poor choices. They're made up of the best qualities of the other parent, that's the other parent's choices of behavior, not their makeup.
Oh,
and
so much good stuff said there.
Yeah. And it's really, really critical. And And I emphasize that really strongly because in my own, I don't think my mom is going to listen to this podcast, but in my growing up experience, I didn't know my biological father, hence why I do what I do. I know a lot about this. And he was made out to be someone who wasn't a great person. As I got older and started to realize that I had an emotional intelligence and education and understanding and sought out to fill that hole that I was feeling, I realized that that's where it came from. And I have an amazing adopted dad. He adopted me when I was 2 years old, and he's incredible, and he's been my dad all the way through. But that hole of half of me being this abyss and this not good person really stuck. So I'm so emphatic with kids and parents that there's a reason why you married them, and they are half them. So they are made up of all the good qualities. And if you see a behavior that concerns you, address the behavior and do not mirror it to the other parent. Oh, you're still your dad. Or that was such a, I hate your mom's attitude. That was so your mom, whatever. It's like that comment was disrespectful. Here's what a respectful comment looks like in that circumstance. You parent. Yeah. You don't compare and you don't mirror. So it's really important. And that's another way that you put kids in this shifty, shaky middle. And then you erode their self-confidence and self-worth by this feeling that half of them isn't great.
Totally.
So behaviors separated from human.
Yeah.
And they are a unique combination of the two of you and made up all on their own. And that's what you go with. And I think when parents actually reflect upon that, they will think twice before the insults. And hey, we're all human. This is all our first time being human. Sometimes something's going to fly. I also, none of us are perfect.
Yes.
If something flies that was so your dad, or I hate your mom's attitude, or whatever it is, it's like, I made a mistake. I reacted. I was emotional. I said something I should not have.
I hear a lot of accountability in that.
Exactly. I made a mistake. I mean, I hate your mom's attitude, but
your dad brought this out in me.
No, I made a mistake. I own this. I'm sorry. That was wrong. That was a moment that I tripped up, and I'm sorry.
See, that's being in charge. That's a really nice way to go back. And I think sorries are probably a big part of this process.
Apologies as a parent are huge. And as you get into teenagehood, when you can apologize,
you're earning street cred. I would imagine, right?
You are earning so many points when you can self-reflect and apologize, even if it's something that seems so ridiculous that you're apologizing for. In their world, it's really important and critical. Parents make mistakes, and owning them in front of your kids shows them. I mean, you don't want to build little narcissists that think that they can do no wrong, or they think, I can't talk to that parent because they think they can do no wrong. Right. And even when they are wrong, they never apologize. You need to be able, apology is a skill, and self-reflection is a skill, and it doesn't erode who you are or make you look less than. It actually is power, and healthy power. It's good to show that you can be a human too.
Yeah.
I screwed up. Right?
Totally. Yeah. Well, yeah. And I mean, they know, our kids, they know. They also have decided when we've screwed up, whether we want to admit or not.
Yeah.
And I think that's a nice way to build an alliance or join together. And again, role model. Because again, this is what we've been saying from the beginning, is we're trying to get our kids to thrive. Kids that are, particularly kids that are going through the process of divorce, separation.
Yep.
But in general, every day, those of us with kids, that's what we want to do. Even as humans, we're trying to thrive, not survive. So I appreciate that response.
Yeah. What's okay, what's not okay. That's regardless of the situation. You want to teach your kids how to identify what's okay and not okay with them.
Yeah.
What's okay and not okay, even though whatever you said was something that didn't work for me in that moment. And they're allowed to say that. Yeah. It's like, okay, I get that didn't work for you. I'm still saying no, but because I'm a parent, but thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
So,
I would agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. Heavy stuff.
Apologies are the key to my heart. And
Yeah.
And I mean, in a way, if that's my job, that's what I do a lot.
Well, yeah. And I mean, it's not like being Canadian, sorry. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Can I have the last bite? Yeah. But it's like,
Genuine, man. Yeah.
Made a mistake. I am sorry for that mistake.
Yeah. You know, one thing I'm learning about sorries is that's where a lot of that self-compassion comes from when we can say that we screwed up or take responsibility. I don't know, anytime that that's happening, especially the late for me, I'm finding a lot more love or kindness towards myself when I say, it's almost like saying sorry to myself as well, because I don't want to behave that way or say that thing that I said either. No. And when it comes out and I can, apologize to the person before me, but also I find it quite helpful to be like, okay, yeah, right, I screwed up. I'm human. Take the responsibility, and hopefully we're not going to be in this same place again. And if we are, then that might be a bit of a different conversation. But I find kindness towards ourselves when we can use those words of I'm sorry.
And I think kindness towards yourself going through, again, separation and divorce, because there's a heavy automatic guilt.
Oh, I bet.
As a parent, to feel like you are hurting your child on purpose, or you're messing up their life, or you see them hurting because of the situation. And go easy on yourself. You have got to go easy. That guilt is real. It is there. It doesn't really ever, it pokes, but you have to be able to know that if you're taking the right steps and good steps and healthy steps, they will learn from that. And life isn't perfect, and life has bumps. And so riding those bumps with your kids, and that really is, instead of that guilt, going back in, like I said, and validating, saying, if you're seeing your child packing up and feeling sad, leaving your stuff at the door, not going in, going, yeah, I'm really sad you're going too. I really hate this. I'm sorry we're divorced. And isn't this awful? Or imagine what it's like for me watching you go. It's like, I can see this is hard for you. What can I do to help you, support you? I see you. I know it's not easy to pack. What can I do? If it's just being here and seeing you, I'll do that. Right. And once you do that and they feel validated, that you're actually connecting more.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think helping that healing process for sure. Yeah. That again, I feel safe to be able to come back and tell you genuinely, this is hard for me or whatnot. I think kids protect, and we've said this before, they protect their parents a lot. And sometimes we will hear kids tell us, when we say, why didn't you tell me that? A lot of times it's in their own way of, you weren't ready to hear it.
You weren't ready to hear it. Exactly.
Right? And I think when our kids can come back and say, this is why I feel this way, I think kudos to you as a parent, because you're trying to pave that safe space for our kids to come back and have those conversations. So that's like a little pat on your back as a parent. Ever evolving, as you say, right?
Again, I'm not a psychologist, but I work really closely with psychologists and working with kids and families all day long, every day, and watching this myself. I think, going back to a lot of what we talked about, knowing that anything is possible in this day and age that can happen with your kids. And if you see something, if you are a parent that's choosing to be in the driver's seat of parenting, which is exhausting and takes a lot of energy and is inconvenient, but it's what needs to be done, you will acutely watch for those signs. What are some signs? Retreating. I mean, we have to also watch that. If you're dealing with teenagers, what's normal teenage behavior versus what's not okay. So retreating for unhealthy lengths of time on the phone, unhealthy lengths of time outside the home, not talking in a positive way about the other parent, shutting down and or acting out, and really just identifying if it's just normal everyday hormone swings or teenage push-pull, because that's what they're doing. They're asserting their independence, but keeping you close. And just watching for those changes in behavior that feel concerning. As a parent, go with your gut. And I learned that the hard way as a parent when my child was struggling with her mental health. And my resources that I reached out to said, A mom's gut knows. A parent's gut knows. So go with your gut. If something's off and you don't know how to approach it, find some help, find some resources. But yeah, just those normal, like something's off, some behaviors are not okay, someone seems unsteady and uneasy. There's an open struggle with packing. There's a struggle with transition time. There's a struggle with participating in school activities. Grades are falling, acting out at school. All those signs are, if you're watching with your eyes wide open, they mean something. And just ask questions, get curious, right? I mean, it's not, oh my God, my child's totally suffering and going down the rabbit hole, but it's get curious. Something might be festering, or it just might be because they didn't make the basketball team, or it might be because their crush didn't look at them correctly or whatever. But just when you're going through the transition, I was working with a couple today, actually, that really is so focused on, and they're at odds right now, but they're ensuring the health of their 2 young sons. The sons are having trouble sleeping. One parent really wants to stick to the sleep training habits. One parent's kind of like, I just want to survive until we get stabilized, so kids are sleeping in my bed. They're at odds about it. And so where we net it out is the kids are feeling the transition. The kids are feeling the tension. It's uneasy. All of a sudden, it's only been 5 weeks. One parent instead of 2 is around. Mom's not around. Their primary caregiver's not around as much. They're feeling uneasy. Yeah. Do what it takes to cope. And when things settle, then we talk about when it's right to add back in sleep training. But right now, they're not sleeping because they're feeling uneasy. So watch for that. Don't try to sleep train. Right. Yeah. And I get, sure, there will be a time to get back to good sleep habits, but right now you're all coping. And it was funny that one parent was like, yeah, I thought that's what you were going to say. So I've kind of like resorted to making my kids laugh and doing Daft Punk dances and having glow sticks and like having a party. Right. And I'm like, perfect.
That's lovely.
Because now you're building connection. But yeah, you're going to see these little nuances that are going to cause inconvenience and stress and lack of sleep, and just watch for them and go with them and address them in a way that is healthy and safe.
Totally. Well, you bring me to my next question, effective co-parenting strategies. So this example was a good one. Young kids, parents have different views right now with sleep training, as you were just saying. And so are there other pieces that you would add to effective co-parenting strategies? I know you're saying right now, meet yourself with where you're at, connect with your kids. At what point is it important to go back and revisit the routine? Or while coping, are we ever going to get to the place of co-parenting again? There's so many scenarios. Parents work out of town, or there's a primary caregiver. There's all sorts of changes and adjustments for all the household members as the homes change. Anything, maybe personally, again, professionally, that stands out to you that you found helpful?
Well, I think on that example of the sleep, because of the 2 different philosophies, I kind of said, okay, guys, what is the ultimate goal right now? Just right now, today, what's the ultimate goal? And both simultaneous said, sleep.
Oh.
And so I said, okay, how are we going to do that? Does it matter? No. Right now, if the ultimate goal is sleep, that's what you agree on, you need sleep, you guys are going to do what you have to do. Yeah. So if it's co-sleeping, if it's Daft Punk dancing till 2 a.m. till they crash and they miss the first few hours of school, big deal.
Yeah.
Because it's survival right now and stability. And so I think finding that ultimate goal, and it might be a simple one like sleep.
Yeah. But you make a good point, because if 2 partners or exes have that ultimate goal, or what's the priority right now, then again, it goes back to episode 54's analogy of we're both swimming towards the end of the pool together.
Yeah.
So ultimate goal is sleep. Sleep is a basic need, and it is fucking underrated.
Yeah.
We put sleep last and everything else first, and then we wonder why we're struggling and crashing.
Yeah.
All sorts of health issues are happening. And so I think that's key. And I think what I also hear you saying in that scenario is parents are both being present. Maybe not support for each other, but support for that ultimate goal.
Ultimate goal.
Yeah, that, okay, you kind of have each other's back there, because we're both just trying to get to that place where we can get rest so the kids can get rest.
If you can't get to a place of agreement or compromise, a third party is always helpful, right? Just to help you navigate to that common goal. Co-parenting, other co-parenting strategies, I'll get really obvious. I think it's critical to have common rules in your households about devices as best you can. I see scenarios where one house has really strict rules about devices, the other one doesn't care. The ultimate suffering is the kids.
Yeah.
And so if you can have a roundabout common philosophical strategies about devices, philosophical strategies about bedtimes, the same strategies about eating habits. Yep, sometimes at the other house, kid's going to have Fruit Loops for breakfast for 7 days. What are you going to let go of? Mm-hmm. Then you can come back in and feed them goji berries and birdseed for breakfast for 7 days, right? Like it all works out in the end.
Yeah.
What hill are you going to die on and what needs to be common ground? So I would say, routines that require, after school. What kinds of snacks are they having after school? What's the homework habit? Sleep habits, hygiene habits. Yeah. That comes up. I have a client right now that's like, my kids come back and they're disgusting. And they're wearing the same clothes that they were 3 days ago. And it's like, okay, that's not okay. How do you, I love seeing the dad that's learning how to braid the hair and brush the hair. And there's hilarious videos on social media about that. But it's like, okay, so hygiene, healthy strategies, device rules, bedtimes, those common operations that build safe structure for kids to feel safe in that even figure eight back and forth. Yeah. And you're not always going to agree. And some things are let go in one house and not the other. And those kinds of things you just stay aware of, and they're not, whether it's something that's affecting the child's functioning and well-being and or adjustment, okay. But it's really important to try to establish those codes of conduct early on and what that actually looks like within your family. So I go back to that separation agreement. It's like, we will not speak ill. We will only communicate about the children. They'll get devices when they're 12. It's like, okay, but what does that actually look like? Yeah. Did they get a device when they're 12 and they're on it for 12 hours a day? Or did they get a device when they're 12 and it's only a phone that allows them to talk to mom and dad and a friend and grandma, or those kinds of specifics that really help with structure for the kids to feel safe. Yeah, like, is the structure and routine for us, the adults, or is it for the kids? And the hope is that we're thinking about the kids, not myself, in the sense of, I don't care if you're on electronics, or I do care too much. It's, well, again, realistically, ages and stages. Where are they at? Ages and stages. What makes sense? I think you talked a lot about brain development, ages and stages. And I think when in doubt, when we can't agree, that will always be the thing to go to. Developmentally, can our child handle this thing here that we are considering, whatever that may be? And I think then we can come back to it. And there'll always be differences. But you can't be perfect. No, and just knowing that you are, that example today of sleep, coming together, you're going to come together. And if you can be mature and have that line of sight to come together for your kid, you will. And there'll always be differences. And it was so funny. This is a hilarious story, actually, because it just kind of sums it up. But my stepkids arrived on Monday, and my stepson, who's going to be 18 on Tuesday, I can't believe it. And I met him when he was 8. I know. Hi, I'm Nate. And now he's 18. But he was like, do we have a Christmas tree up yet? And I said, oh, yeah, no, we'll probably go this weekend because, and he's like, well, didn't we have it up last year? I'm like, yeah, your dad got it way too early and it died December 20th. It was dead. And he was laughing. He's like, oh, yeah. And I said, do you guys have one up at your mom's? And he said, oh, yeah, mom's got one up, but it's not real. And I laughed and I said, oh, yeah. And he said, yeah. And I said, well, I would never, I respect that. I love that. Yeah. And I was like, I will always and forever have a real tree. And he's like, and that, my friends, is the difference between my mom's and my dad's house. It was so funny right there. Yeah. she can't handle and that's okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm getting a real tree, it was so funny. Like his brain, like, and that, my friends, is the difference between the two houses. Because our house is chaos. So we've got a dog. And anyways, of course, I'm getting a real tree just to add it in. And,
right.
And
but it's cute. It's like characteristics, so funny. And there's room for both. There's room for both. A pink tree if we want.
Exactly.
You know, like we're going to go with, and that's cute that he's able to recognize that, and no one is better than the other.
No one is better than the other.
But there are differences, and that's okay.
And I, of course, would never would be like, oh, that's your mom.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I love it. That's like, that's so your mom, because I can say that.
You also know each other too, to know what, exactly.
And the reason that he can say that and make fun of both of us is because we've created that situation. Or like, you know, they'll laugh. They'll be like, when mom has people over, she makes us tidy our room. Like, tidy your room, kids. I'm having people over. Like, no one's coming in my room. Whereas I'm totally opposite. I'm like, people are coming over. Shut your doors. You know? Like you have to find that ability to have, you said it. Someone said to me one of my really tight support people said to me, I couldn't function thinking about my kids having to live in two homes. And he said to me, he said, Heidi, they're still in the nest. Mm-hmm. It's just wider.
Aww.
And it's always stuck with me. And that's, if you can make the nest and make room for everybody and all their ways of doing things, but keep that framework around the kids for safety.
Yeah.
Sure, they may have Fruit Loops for 7 days at mom's house and goji berries at dad's, but you know what? They're going to live.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you know, rules around devices and bedtime and hygiene, and that's about survival, and that's about health.
Yes. Yeah. So. Well said. I just have a follow-up question. When we talked about effective co-parenting strategies, if there are family members like grandmas and grandpas and aunts and uncles and anyone and everyone in between listening, any advice for them as their loved ones are navigating divorce and co-parenting? Because sometimes grandmas help drive, and sometimes we go to aunt's house for a break. And so anything that you would suggest or think about that other village that we hope is helping this process, you know, go a little smoother.
Everyone will have their own experience and emotions and feelings about your divorce. That's not your job to manage them. They need to find their coping strategies for themselves and hold space. If you're a grandparent or you're an aunt, hold space for the other parent. They're your grandchild's or your niece and nephew's other parent. You may not be happy with their behavior. You may not like them. You may be mad. You may be sad. You may be upset with their decision. Find a way to hold space for them. I heard this great story on a podcast this week about a woman who she went through a divorce, and her ex-husband's family was this big family who celebrated the holidays with massive family gatherings, and her family's really small and kind of lives all over the place. And she was spending her first Christmas Eve was like the big gathering where there was tons of food and tons of laughs and tons of games, and she was spending it alone. And the grandma sent the niece over to her house with a big pot of
I'm going to cry now.
Goulash from grandma because she knew it was her favorite. And that stuck with me. I'm going to cry too, because it's like, it is the hardest. It might be your divorce. Yeah. And of course, your family's going to support you. Hold space for the other person. I was divorced 11 years ago, met my ex-husband in 1996, and I talk to his mom twice a week. We're still close. She's the grandmother to my daughters. Hold space. Yeah. And then offer the support where you can give it. There's going to be rules and first right of refusal and who gets to babysit and all that stuff. Both parents need to understand that it is important for the child to have exposure and experience and love from all the family members if they have love to give.
Yeah.
And it might be your first right of refusal, but it might be actually really good for your kid to go spend a few hours with grandma and give you a break, or just because it's not about you, it's actually what's best for them. And sometimes that's really hard to see. So allow them to be a part of it. And then if you are those grandparents and aunts and uncles, ask how you can support. So if someone is going through that, if you're trying to find your way in to see your grandparents, or grandkids, I'm worried about seeing, ask how you can support and continue to be a part in the way that's going to work for the family unit that's shifting.
I like the ask, not tell. Kudos to folks that can get there, and a lot of respect, as you said, to those that are doing their best to get there.
There. Yeah. Yeah. And it was awesome. Like, if you're the biological parent, I'll never forget this moment. My stepdaughter was in a volleyball game and her mom was there, and coach came over and said, "Oh, are you EJ's mom?" And my stepdaughter's biological mom said, "Well, yeah, I'm one of them."
Oh, that's a great response.
And yeah, that may not be your reality, but it's something to work towards. Yeah. And if you are a person who's maybe causing a little conflict, ask yourself, where do you want to be? How do you want that to show up? How would that feel if you could put your stuff aside and say that? And to say that takes a really big person. And what does it do for me? It acknowledges me as that step parent who has stepped in by choice and shown up for my stepkids as a trusted, loving parent, role model, and outsider, insider that can be all those things.
Well, yeah, like you're to me, it's also like a great strategy of, if possible, to build some kind of connection, because that respect towards you is going to only come back towards my kids with so much love.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to I would imagine, make you want to be that other one, right?
Yeah.
As she said. And I think that's fantastic that, like, I would imagine for you, looking back from your personal experience as a child and going through it as well with your ex and seeing where your family unit is now, how cool is it that you and your stepson can laugh at both moms, and that's another bonding thing. When your kids can make fun of you, it's the greatest thing for them. And I would imagine being able to make fun of mom and stepmom, and how nice is it to be part of a conversation like that versus tiptoeing over, oh no, mom hasn't put it up yet, or because I don't want to make you feel bad that you haven't put, like, that's not that doesn't matter.
And another sort of nugget of hope for those listening that aren't there yet or don't feel that I didn't think this was possible. Back in the early days of lots of back and forth and lots of moving parts and lots of transition and conflict and emotions, did I think we were going to be sitting at Nate's football game, all in one big row, all grandparents, my ex's parents, he's not, all together, two moms. Wow. Didn't think that. And it's possible.
I have goosebumps.
And it happens. Yeah. And when you work towards that North Star, that sleep, it really is, it can work. And it does take self-reflection and self-awareness and understanding and tolerance.
Yeah. Well said. So is there anything at this point that you want to circle back to, or anything you wish we did bring up that maybe we didn't talk about yet?
Oh man, I feel like we've covered so much. I think people's heads are exploding. I just want to give a shout out, because no matter what situation you're in, parenting is not easy. And parenting through divorce and overwhelm, if you're in the thick of it, baby steps. And you have, if you've totally blown it and your kids feel like collateral damage from your divorce, you can turn it around, and you can start today. There's
never
always
too
today.
late to
it's
show
never
up.
too late to show up in the way that they need. And I get you're doing your best, and we all carry trauma and we all carry our past, and just know that I see you for all of that and acknowledge how challenging it is, and just get yourself down to ground zero, see that North Star, and start taking the steps forward.
That's lovely. Do you want to add a call to action, or do you want that to be your call to action?
Yeah, I mean, I want people to buy my guide, because it is so, and not because it's like, buy my guide and I'm selling to you. I honestly, I really believe in the fundamentals of love, safety, belonging, how you can separate yourself and put your emotions in one bucket takes learning and practice and skill. And you might be listening going, oh yeah, I totally get that. Trust me, you don't. And if you buy the ebook and watch the videos, you're going to go, oh my God, no matter if you're about to tell your kids you're getting divorced, you've already told your kids, or you're 3 years in, you are going to take away something that is going to improve your parenting, and your kids will thank you. And if you're needing support, reach out. I'm at HeidiDinning.com. I'm really, as I think you know now, part 2, passionate about meeting people where they're at and supporting them to move forward no matter what. I hold zero judgment. I've heard it all. I've been through it all. I've seen it all. I see the struggles and I see people for who they are and what they need to uncover in themselves and support them to move forward. So if you're struggling, if you're in recovery from your divorce, still wondering what now, if you're contemplating, if you're in the thick of co-parenting, if you're getting nasty gram texts and you don't know how to cope, just reach out. Yeah. I want to be there to help you. And there are resources on my website if you're not ready to go live. And know that there is someone out there who has experienced and really, like you said in the beginning, worked really hard and continues to work hard to fill those gaps of what people actually really feel and need going through separation and divorce.
I love it. Thanks for dropping your plug too. So we'll have your website up, we'll have your socials up, we'll have some of those resources that you talked about today up again.
Awesome.
They're also up under episode 54 as well. Okay, so I want to thank you for coming back and having this conversation again.
It's awesome. I loved it. I just said awesome 10 times, but it
is awesome. It is awesome.
So real.
It is. And honestly, sitting with you just, I think, brings a lot of hope, because there are so many things we can do, redo, go back and look at. You talk about it in a human way that there's just no wrong or right. It's a big life change. And when we acknowledge that, it's very, very eye-opening in how you share that the hope is there. It's possible to get to the other end of that pool. Yes. So I want to thank you for coaching those. I had a listener actually tell me that they know you, that you're working with them.
Awesome.
So when I posted up, how cool is that?
That's so cool.
That you're out there helping people. And I hope those that are looking for support, if we have listeners that are outside of Calgary, if you don't know how to find someone with where you're located, if Heidi can't help you, because sometimes I know interprovincial or, countries with your certificates might not work, you will help them figure that out, find someone. You have great resources and ways that people can connect. So don't think that you must be from Calgary in order to reach out to Heidi. That's not the case.
Not at all. I have clients all over Canada, some in the US, and exactly when it gets to the point where there's a border issue, we translate the work and information.
You figure it out.
Yeah, we figure it out.
You have a lot of tools in your bag.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. It's heavy.
Okay, so thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you to everyone listening. As we say, these conversations are door openers. We really want to keep this conversation going. So please follow up with feedback. Let us know if there's something in particular that maybe we didn't cover that you want to know more about. Heidi will come back. We will find a way to get to the bottom of what it is on your mind. The bottom line is we want to keep these conversations going. So thanks again for being here, and thank you everyone for listening.